그럼 수상자를 얼른 발표해 볼까요?
네. 제1회 청룡 시리즈 어워즈 신인 남자 예능인상 축하드립니다. 신세계로부터
choujimi.
씨 축하드립니다.
I keep putting my foot right back into the bear trap with this conversation, but I still feel like I haven't fully expressed my understanding of the situation. And that's what it's boiled down to, right? I was willing to concede that vocal ability is important, absolutely, although it's not something personally important to me, so I don't care about whether or not an idol is a good vocalist on stage, and I respect that not everybody holds that same opinion. That was my stance, and still is my stance. That's where I laid down my sword on the battlefield and tried to walk away, but the conversation has not stopped there. People are calling me confused, that I treat idols as objects, that I'm disrespecting the K-pop industry with my opinion, and so on. So I'm putting my foot right back into the bear trap for the time being. I have not changed my mind on this. If anything, in trying to deconstruct my viewpoint in the wake of the criticism, like trying to question if I'm being irrational about this, I feel like I've become even more radical on this issue the more I've engaged with people about it across these past 3 episodes of In Defense of Sakura. The previous episodes, by the way, if you have not watched them, are not required reading. I'm going to mention everything here. I'm going to go over the main constructive points that I've received. They're timestamped in the description. That will be the structure of this video. I'm going to outline my understanding of the most common arguments and hopefully dismantle the bear trap in this way. As always, if you agree or disagree with this or see it in a different way, I hope you'll hear me out and let me know what you think. So, starting with the first section, that K-pop is about the talent, or K-pop should be about the talent. Probably the most common argument I received is that K-pop has long built itself upon the talents of the idols who make up this industry. There's an understanding that idols and groups from generations gone by have developed K-pop into something more credible in the eyes of the global marketplace through their talents. The argument is, K-pop is taken more seriously today because of the hard work put in by second and third gen groups, and all of that hard work is being bastardized by the 4th generation talent famine. So, if idols no longer have to be talented, K-pop won't be taken as seriously. There is a real argument to be made here, and if I had to play devil's advocate with myself, first generation K-pop literally collapsed because the idols weren't talented. They were not good performers, and so entertainment companies had to go back to the drawing board and build up a new generation of K-pop idols in response to this. Second gen groups developed better performance skills, and the industry grew and gained more recognition because of that. K-pop was now about the talent in second generation. We then progressed onto the third generation some years later, and the focus on talent began to falter, but not in any particular direction. The reasons behind K-pop's globalization in the second and third generation is a little hard to pin down, because the artists and music that became global phenomena during this time found their success and recognition for various different reasons. I would say Gangnam Style, BTS, and Blackpink all gained global recognition for various different reasons. It's hard to say whether or not the inherent talent of these idols was the thing that caught everyone's attention. People are drawn to and become fans of K-pop in different ways and for different reasons. However, there is an argument to be made that Blackpink's Coachella performance in particular probably opened a lot of people's eyes to the genuine talents held by idols in the K-pop industry. The more recent successes seen out of K-pop in the 4th generation are Jungkook's Golden album, Anti-Fragile by LE SSERAFIM, Cupid by 50/50, and OMG and Super Shy by NewJeans, among others. I'm not here to say definitively why I think each of these songs were so successful, because I don't think there is just one linear answer. These songs didn't become popular for the same reason. I think that's pretty safe to say. I think this is a problem that we keep running into with this discussion. K-pop is not just one thing, and so making a statement like K-pop is all about this or K-pop should be about this is unproductive. Considering the industry is constantly in evolution, as it seems generally, the most successful groups in K-pop right now are not the ones who go out of their way to showcase their talents. The most popular groups right now struggle in one or several aspects of performance where more all-rounder groups don't receive the same kind of recognition. The first generation fell apart largely because of the lack of talent, yet the 4th generation is seemingly able to withstand the same circumstance. Idols today are not that talented compared to second and third gen on average, right? Yet, K-pop still persists. The groups who find themselves under the most scrutiny over their performance ability are usually the most successful. Why is this the case? I don't know. Other than I would say most fans aren't sensitive to performance ability when it comes to K-pop. As I've experienced, the conversation tends to move away from K-pop should be all about the talent to K-pop is all about the talent in absolute. Rather than just a statement, this is more of a demand that K-pop fans should put more weight on the performance ability of any given idol or group. Once again, this claim makes sense. It's understandable given what K-pop is, but the part where I get lost is trying to convince people that they should change the way they engage with K-pop. This claim can be backed from the lessons of the first generation's demise that K-pop ought to be about the talent, right? I think this is very important to consider, that first generation fell apart largely because of Korea's criticism of the idol's performance abilities, and somewhere, somehow, in the globalization pipeline or development of the idol industry, this viewpoint or standard has become less strict. The quality of performance between second to fourth generation is pretty dismal. That's why I don't at all blame K-pop fans for wanting things to return to how it used to be. And if I had to guess, it is this in combination with maybe K-pop fans who they themselves are involved in the performing arts, witnessing all of these largely untalented groups grow to represent the industry in the modern day. I think that's why this discussion is as volatile as it is, and why people think I'm gaslighting them with an opinion that I'm holding to myself and expecting nobody else to adopt. So, as I'm accused of objectifying idols and disrespecting true talent in the industry, I want to continue to investigate. Does this mean that people who don't care about this, people who don't care about the performing arts, no, not even that. People who care about the performing arts but don't care about the quality of it, or can't be bothered to put weight into or measure the quality of it, see idols as objects? No. Not inherently, although, of course, some people do. When considering Koreaboos, who do make objects out of really anyone and anything relating to East Asian culture, that is one part of it. But I believe the larger part of this is, I just don't think the performing arts is as commanding of an aspect to the industry for the vast majority of K-pop fans. I don't bring that up because I think that's the morally right thing to do, or the morally right perspective to have. I just think that's where we're at in terms of the K-pop community. And I am not saying that since this is what the majority thinks, you need to change your mind. Not at all. I'm digging this discussion back out of the ground because I think there's a genuine power or a genuine solution in recognizing that there are two primary viewpoints, among others, in this discussion that are heavily at odds and are both backed with reasoning. Neither side is being irrational about this. That is what I observe as the general reality of the situation right now, and that to me is where these statements about how K-pop is all about the talent come from. It was all about the talent for a long time. That's kind of what built the second generation and set the foundation for K-pop's globalization process. It comes from a want to impress this standard into K-pop and make it a reality, even though it isn't right now for, I would say, the majority of K-pop fans. Case in point, NMIXX is still at the door waiting to be let inside. If K-pop was even remotely about the talent in the eyes of the companies or the consumers, NMIXX would be number one by far. They are the most talented idol group with the best composition in this generation by a landslide, yet receive so little recognition for it. I will be the first one to concede that their debut was hindered by the song they were given drawing too much attention away from the members themselves, but they've since been given many more opportunities since that point to showcase their individual talents and group composition. If K-pop was all about the talent, the Love Me Like This to Party O'Clock pipeline should have put them on the path to world domination at this point. NMIXX really does not have a contemporary in fourth generation K-pop, yet they are one of the most underappreciated groups. Why is this the case? I don't defend this. I think NMIXX absolutely does deserve to be appreciated, lifted up, and celebrated for their talents in distinction, but not at the cost of putting down other groups who don't meet that performance standard. Why can't NMIXX be recognized and honored in isolation? This brings me to the second most common point I got, which is that not caring about the talent is disrespectful to actually talented idols and the hard work that previous generations have put in to make K-pop more credible. To start this section off, I want to say again that I enjoy K-pop as a hobby. As much as I like appreciating it in detail, and I do, I'm not someone who cares at all whether or not an idol is talented on stage. That doesn't mean I see K-pop idols as objects or not real artists. My quite radical, I guess, understanding of this is that K-pop idols do not inherently need to be musical artists, although they can be, and I don't discourage them from doing so. Groups like ATEEZ and Mamamoo, who I'll talk about later, They're K-pop idols, but they're also very clearly insanely talented musical artists and present themselves as such. They deserve to be celebrated, but in my opinion, and the knife that I think is stuck in the cog of this whole discussion is that artistically talented groups deserve to be celebrated, but not at the cost of putting less talented groups down. One of my favorite eras of performance is Savage by aespa, where most of the time the members were getting heavily criticized for having poor stage presence and not singing live. I acknowledge that a lot of people don't appreciate aespa's lack of stage presence, but that also doesn't hinder my appreciation for aespa or this period of their career either. They were a new group during Savage, and in retrospect have since increased in stage presence immensely after each comeback. At the same time as Savage, another one of my most favorite eras of performance is Mamamoo's legendary run on Immortal Songs. If we're to get technical and compare these two, of course, Mamamoo deserves way more praise for what they did on Immortal Songs, but I also won't deny or neglect the effort that went into both of these eras, right? aespa undoubtedly worked very hard during Savage promotional era throughout all of 2021, and while their live stages aren't exactly celebrated for what the end product turned out to be, I still appreciate them for doing it, and I still appreciate this era entirely. I appreciate both of these performances for very different reasons, and I don't discredit Savage for being the least impressive in terms of performance ability. I'll reiterate, a talented performer in K-pop should absolutely be praised and lifted up in special recognition for their talents. Absolutely. I put Mamamoo at the very top of the K-pop vocal talent tier list. In terms of idol groups, nobody is really their contemporary in terms of vocal performance, in my opinion. No idol group is as well-rounded vocally as Mamamoo is. I celebrate them for that reason. They're the best of the best on the choujimi charts, and have been for quite a while at this point. What they did on Immortal Songs, like very few idol groups throughout the history of K-pop could do that as well as they did. At the same time, while Mamamoo is at the very top of the tier list for me, I'm not going to criticize or condemn an idol group that is dead last on the tier list, because in the end, and here's the thing, the nexus that I'm seeing, what does the group that is dead last on the vocal tier list have to do with Mamamoo? There's this idea that because fans don't criticize the groups with poor vocal ability or don't inherently expect good vocal ability in idol groups, that groups like Mamamoo and their built-up credibility and vocal performance are somehow jeopardized by this. This is the most jarring point I've come across in this whole discussion, is people who say it's just outlandish or ridiculous or so shocking that I don't care whether or not an idol is a good vocalist. The claim that having this opinion is disrespectful to artists who do put in effort for vocal performance, and my question is how? If I can celebrate idols like Mamamoo for being great vocalists and also celebrate idols who are not great vocalists, how does that jeopardize the validity or credibility of Mamamoo? Here is where I become the most abrasive in this discussion. If you think that K-pop fans ought to be more critical of vocal performance in the K-pop industry so as to not disrespect the most talented idols, I don't get it. That is something very systemic in my eyes, to believe one idol's abilities can somehow be jeopardized by another's. That the credibility of K-pop is so all-encompassing that K-pop idols are at risk of not being taken seriously at large for the faults of a couple of untalented idols. The credibility of the entire industry is called into question because of this, and my question again is why? If a trained vocalist like Hwieun cannot be taken seriously because of the faults of an idol who has nothing to do with her, or if she is being disrespected in this process just because they're in the same industry, nobody has been able to explain this to me. And this idea to me is bordering on xenophobia. If the discussion is leading us to believe that no K-pop idol is going to be taken seriously if idols are not talented universally, that is a systemic issue that we as K-pop fans should be working to tear down, not facilitate. To use the Western music industry to represent why this is so weird to me, an artist like Olivia Rodrigo, who is a relatively newer artist, and her performance ability was heavily criticized in the first 2 or so years of her career. I'm thinking about the VMA's performance specifically. It was not a good performance to people who care about live vocals on stage. So, since Olivia Rodrigo was one of the most successful artists of 2021 in spite of this criticism, somebody needs to go check up on Beyonce. Is Beyonce's legacy at risk because Olivia Rodrigo is getting criticized for her performance ability? Does Olivia Rodrigo as an artist, as an individual performer, in any way represent the skill set that Beyonce has? They are both in the same industry, so is the image of Western pop music at risk of being tarnished in this way? No, I don't see that. Beyonce is not Olivia Rodrigo. It's fine to have watched the VMA's performance, to have criticized Olivia for it, and wish she would become a better performer, but to extend that criticism and say that she's making a mockery of Western pop music's credibility is a bit too much, in my opinion. She's a part of the industry, but does not represent it in that way. Olivia has since improved a lot in performance ability, but at no point throughout her development as a performer did it ever even cross my mind to question the validity of Western pop music, and certainly not the integrity of other artists in the same industry. This is my same viewpoint for K-pop artists. I recognize that Huiyin is one of the most talented vocalists in K-pop right now, yet I don't need to put any other idol down in any way in order to lift Huiyin up. I think more than anybody, Huiyin would suffer the most as a result of this, being compared to other artists who she should not be compared to. Huiyin is her own individual, she's her own artist, and while she is a part of the K-pop industry, it is too limiting, in my opinion, to say that she has to represent it. That's not fair, right? She deserves to be able to do what she wants to do. This is the basis for my whole viewpoint in this discussion. I don't not criticize K-pop idols who are untalented because I think they should be able to get away with it. I just don't see it as worth my time. If I had to switch my mindset and be overly critical of K-pop idols who can't hold a note on stage, I would grow to seriously hate the industry. I would be miserable. I wouldn't enjoy K-pop anymore. That's not why I'm here. The third most common argument I got, and the point I want to make to get us to the conclusion, was the quote, any other job statement. That if this were any other job, such as an office job, an employee would be fired for not meeting the standards of the position. If Sakura was an accountant and couldn't do math or didn't know how to use a calculator, there would be a serious problem, right? She wouldn't be able to do her job in any capacity and would most likely get fired. The impasse that I think is entirely subjective here is, what is an idol's job description really? Again, that is subjective. Between groups, labels, companies, countries, the job description of an idol is not just one thing. Sometimes it doesn't even include singer or vocalist in the description, and sometimes it does. It's a tricky question, and people tend to negate or try to circumvent this honestly impossible question by skipping straight to, an idol should at the very least be able to sing their own songs. And this brings me to the conclusion of this video and my answer to the question presented. Do idols need to be able to sing? Not do K-pop idols need to be talented singers. The question is, do K-pop idols need to be able to sing bassline? My answer is yes, they do. I don't blame anybody for holding this position, again, given that K-pop is situated in the performing arts. To say no to this, in my opinion, would not be disrespectful to the K-pop industry at large, but would open the floodgates for idols who put in zero effort universally. There does need to be some barrier set up if K-pop is to remain operating in the music industry. I think we would run into just as many, if not more, problems if idols did not face any kind of repercussion for doing nothing. I think idols should be encouraged to develop, at the very least, stable performance skills. They should be encouraged to put in effort where they can, but I think the most effective way we can do that is to lift up idols who excel in these talents. I said from the very beginning that criticizing Sakura is unproductive. I still believe that. At the end of all of this, as we've seen with Sakura and others, an outright criticism of an idol, regardless of how good intentioned that criticism is, provides an open space for haters to co-opt the message to make it out to be something overly hateful, and in the process devalues any and all constructive criticism. I wish it wasn't this way. I wish idols could be criticized constructively, but that's not the nature of the K-pop industry or community. That does not mean I'm saying that idols can't or should not be criticized or that you should stop caring about performance ability. I mean to say that there has to be a better way to see this criticism realized. This is what led me to creating the first video in defense of Sakura. I saw the criticism as hatred because that's very quickly what it turned into. Even the comments on my videos, the hatred just seeps into these discussions and muddies the waters as people try to utilize this moment to be overly hateful towards idols they don't like. How do we fix this? I don't know. But I believe now that the more effective way to encourage the K-pop industry to be more focused or more sensitive to the performing arts is by lifting up idols who are putting in the work and avoiding putting another idol or group down in the process. There are too many faults, there are too many risks to that process. NMIXX deserves to be lifted up high in praise, but not at the expense of groups with less talent or composition. Who benefits from that? I don't think any party benefits from comparing idols and groups as if they somehow represent one another. Every group, every idol deserves the chance to represent themselves as an individual performer and should be recognized as such. That is my solution. The absolution of Sakura in my eyes. I don't blame anybody for wanting her to be a better singer or deciding you don't appreciate her because she's not one currently. I don't defend idols like Sakura because I see them as objects. I'm barely into K-pop for the idol aspect of the industry nowadays anyways. I just don't see any meaningful change coming out of addressing the problem in the way that it has been, and that's it. That is my opinion. At the end of things, and in the words of people who often disagree with me, K-pop is never that serious. I don't think there's a right answer here. In actively trying to change my mind, to change my viewpoint on this from the input and perspectives of people who disagree with me, I don't think there's an understanding of this situation that could lead everybody to a somewhat singular conclusion about this, as it would cause people, it would ask people to change the way they enjoy K-pop. I know. There is an honest power in being able to recognize this for what it is, and recognize the thoughts and concerns of the people who disagree with you, that there are reasonable and valid viewpoints behind most sides of this conversation, and the conflict really only arises when we try to explain the industry off in too general of a way to serve our own viewpoints. When we have to make a monolith out of K-pop because there's no other way we can get other people to change their minds, K-pop has to be one thing, or about one thing or cause in order for our points to stand, when in reality, K-pop is not going to bend itself for any of our wishes. It is way too big, too dynamic of an industry. We can't write it off as just one thing. That would be doing a disservice to what K-pop is more than anything else, I really believe. This is now my understanding. I'm, as always, willing to hear out other people's perspectives, but I stand firmly on the ground I've always been on, in spite of the ongoing discussions, and I don't expect anybody else to do anything differently. I don't think anybody should approach this conversation with the intention of changing the way that people enjoy K-pop, as long as it's enjoyed with good intentions, but there absolutely can be and should be a space for conversation about how we engage with the K-pop community. And that's it. I'm stepping out of the bear trap. Please let me know what you think about this. Thank you for watching if you did. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.